Roll call.
Alderman Sizmarsky. Alderman Woods. Alderman Roy Wesley.
I'm here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Alderman Sorrentino.
Here.
Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here. I need a motion to approve the minutes from February 11th.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Corrections, changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, report and recommendation for amendment of Chapter 14, Article V, the discharge of firearms and shooting gallery. Go ahead.
All right, we received a request from a business in town, up in the industrial park. It's Windy City Sourcing, that they primarily deal in, not necessarily antique, but older rifles and firearms. Not really a retail business, but more of over the internet and stuff. They do have their federal firearms license. They've been in town for several years, and they've been in business for 10 years. Anyway, so based on that letter, we worked with a couple of the city attorneys, and our code previously says that it's unlawful to discharge any firearm or to operate a shooting gallery, basically except for a police officer in the line of duty. What the attorney has represented to us is that we really have to amend that code, and what they're recommending is keeping it as unlawful to discharge any firearm or air gun in location or facility unless it's done in operation in cooperation with their federal firearms license. And then also adding some language in there that doesn't prohibit someone from defending their property or themselves in compliance with the Illinois compiled statutes. So they're recommending a slight change to the wording. As I said, we've had no problems with this business. He is governed by the ATF as far as any firearm sales, and we have not had any issues. He's looking to use a range encapsulator, which is a smaller than this table movable thing to just test fire some of these rifles before they go out to sale. 3 to 5 rounds per rifle, so we don't seem to see a problem with that.
Is that what that bullet trap system is that you're talking about?
That's correct, and it's supposed to, eliminate any lead problems, safety problems. We have an encapsulator down in the firing range, and we've never had any problems with something like that either. So. Thank you.
Any concern with noise?
No, because it's in the industrial park. If it was residential,
Yeah, right.
it'd be a little bit different story, but we're not really worried about. It'll be on a pretty rare occasion. It's not going to be nonstop throughout the day, so just on occasions.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Am I missing the address of where this location's gonna be?
They
It's already
are 764 Edgewood, I believe it is. If you go up there, they're not, you won't even see a large sign outside. They don't have a retail presence up there. It's mostly online, and like I said, a lot of it is actually firearms parts, not a lot of commercially available, handguns and stuff like that. It's more the old M14, old military rifles that he deals with.
Okay.
And it is an industrial park, so, I mean, all he's asking, it's prohibited in industrial park, all he's asking is for testing. Will he be able to test our guns if we have them, or no?
Yeah, like I mentioned, he's been very cooperative with us, and he said if we ever, need some assistance to use it, he'd be happy to work with us, so.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Greg, you mentioned about testing. They sell stuff too, correct?
Correct.
Do we have a rough idea on sales?
I don't know the total number of sales, but if they sell any multiple firearms to any person, they have to report that to us, and that rarely happens, like to a couple times a year that there's more than one firearm sold to a person. So they're following all the ATF rules. I don't know the total number of firearms they sell up there, but it's mostly, it's more of a niche business and not a large retail business.
You done?
I take it a business like this would have double alarms or whatever, or just a regular security alarm?
Security and safes and, you know, keeping things locked up after hours. There's probably just as much risk as a firearm being taken out of a residence in a burglary as there is at a business, really.
I'm sorry to ask all these questions, but
I-
I look at Chicago so
I,
much.
I will tell you one thing, I did drive up there. I can't tell that it's a gun place at all. There's no big sign, no advertising. I think he does most of his sales online. It's very rarely you're going to see someone go in there. I don't even think he's got handguns in there to sell right off to the public.
Not a stock of them, like
Right.
I said, a lot of it's the old M14 military
Right.
rifles that there's not a huge market for it.
So, I mean, I don't see a problem. What Randy has another question. Go
No,
ahead.
I mean, I think you just said it. I mean, he's an antique dealer. He's not like an arms dealer. So follows all the rules. He hasn't been cited by the ATF. At least I didn't read that. So I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment in the.
Second
Second.
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Question, oh wait, question? Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number B, ordinance amending the city code for Wooddale stop sign ordinance, chapter 15, article XX, section 15-2004 of the city code. That is my motion, approve that. If you read the packets, it's.
Second.
Okay. Oh, wait, Greg has something.
No, I just wanted to point out, there's one small change in this that actually the
forgot.
I-390 south frontage road eastbound at Edgewood Avenue is not gonna have a stop sign permanently, so we'll write the ordinance not to have it. They'll have a temporary one up now, which can still be done under the code, so I just have, the final ordinance will be written and forwarded to you guys for the next meeting anyways. Just know that that one line won't be in there.
Okay, motioner agrees to change the motion with the changes that we just discussed. Does the secondary agree?
I would agree.
Second agrees.
Okay. Okay, so still up, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Items considered future meetings. False alarm ordinance revised resident September. Motion to adjourn. Oh, wait. Mayor?
I do have one. I don't know if it should go into public health and safety, but,
Oh, yeah.
or finance. It's regarding the garbage and the RFP and everything. When we're going out for that, we're gonna get all options, not just, you know, not just one thing, right? I wanna make
Go
sure.
ahead.
Yeah, correct. That's, actually, we have that listed on finance, future items for
Okay,
later
well,
this summer.
Yeah, we didn't.
And we're gonna
finance
get,
that. Okay, I thought I saw it, but.
We aren't going to have it, a committee's picking it. We're going to see it all.
No, no,
Every
no,
council
that's,
member. Okay,
that's different.
okay.
I mean, We
So,
just don't want.
you want to bring up your Soft Creek cleanup? Public health and safety.
Oh, you know when I got stopped.
Okay,
I'll get it.
so, that will, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. You
So we're
want to
jumping.
go planning and zoning?
Yep. I'd like to call to order Planning and Zoning and Building
Oh, no.
Committee,
Want to go public works since Art didn't back up?
or Arts Public Works.
Who's Cole?
Go planning zoning, because
Planning and
it
Zoning.
All right.
makes
Okay.
sense.
Minute taker, please take note, the same council members are present. The mayor just left the room, though. Okay.
Back in the room.
Next, I need make a motion to approve the minutes of Planning and Zoning and Building Committee, regular meeting February 11th, 2016.
So move. Out.
Any corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is a report and recommendation from Pine Lane annexation and rezoning. Ms. Chrissy, you have a quick overview?
Just a quick overview of the request. The property that is, the subject property is located about 50 feet south of the Potter Street and Pine Lane intersection. It's highlighted here on the map. The adjacent zoning is residential. The request is to annex and rezone to R4's single family. It is currently a vacant lot. The petitioner intends to build a new single-family home on the structure. The CDC recommended approval, citing that it was compatible with the surrounding zoning and land use classifications, also consistent with the comprehensive plan designation for single-family residential, and then it's also consistent with the UDO in terms of the lot size or the lot area and width.
Alderman Jacob.
I'd make a motion to approve the Pine Lane annexation and rezoning.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
You finished with your quick, okay, so all in favor?
Question.
Question? Go ahead.
So, right now, let me make sure, this property is unincorporated?
That is correct.
Does he have sewer and water at all?
No, it's unimproved, so there's no improvements to the property at this point.
So we going, I thought,
There's water in the area.
but I thought when we annex people in, if there's water in the area, that they have to tap into it. Are they going to tap into it?
When the home is constructed as part of the permit, then the applicant will tap into the existing water main.
Is there sewer out there too?
It's a little bit more difficult to get to, as I understand, but yes,
So,
they will tap into the sewer as well. There's no private septic that's allowed, so he has to tap into the public system.
so before he gets a final occupancy permit, that will be taken care of?
Correct.
Because we aren't going to give him final, because we have done in the past, we gave him occupancy and we never, had to connect in people.
No, as a requirement of the permit, he will have to connect to the public system,
Okay.
both water and sewer.
Alderman R. Wesley?
On this street, is there a recapture agreement?
There is, yes, and the petitioner has paid the recapture.
Okay, so they're aware of that. Okay.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Just a question. I know the rest of the subdivision there has sidewalks. Will there be sidewalks on that side of the street as well, or is that anything planned or that's not planned? It doesn't really matter. I'm just curious.
I don't know, I'd have to check into that.
Alderman Messina?
And that lot has been purchased, right?
Correct.
Okay. Has there been any code enforcement? Because I know when we went by, there was a lot of dumping and tires, and
It is currently unincorporated.
so we can't do
don't have
nothing.
jurisdiction
Right.
over the property at this point.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. R. Wesley.
Don't we require that they put in a sidewalk?
I'd have to double check our regulations. I don't know that, I'd have to double check. I don't recall. We would require, if they are required to put in a sidewalk, we would require it at a time of building permit. So that would be part of the permit review process.
Okay. Because I remember we talked about a subdivision before where they have to, when they build a house, they have to put a sidewalk in.
Mayor?
Yeah, that area, actually, the house that came in for the fence permit variation last year, he doesn't have a sidewalk as of right now. Again, that house was already built and whatnot, so, right, but, and he's only the one house. I mean, how many other lots are there? That's,
Alderman Jacob?
The other thing is this is a totally different developer than all those other properties there, so it's not the same. Has nothing to do with the other development, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions?
One more.
Go ahead.
So my question, and Randy brought up the point. Once we annex this property in, is there going to be a timeline when they would have to have that area cleaned up, knowing that we annex it in, now they got to follow our code?
That is correct. So once it's annexed, then they would be subject to all of our rules and regulations. And so if there was debris, then they would be subject
course,
to our
we're going-
enforcement.
Of course, we're going to give them some time to do that, but not a year or whatever, but,
Correct. It's
Okay.
my understanding that the petitioner has actually prepared drawings, and so they'll be coming in for permit. So they're likely going to be clearing the site and proceeding with the building of a home.
that's fine. That's the reason why we try and annex property in, but we want to try to clean it up like we talked in the previous
Absolutely.
meetings, so I'm in favor of it, so.
Alderman Messina?
So no building will happen on that lot until they're annexed in if we approve it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And Alderman Jacob.
Just to let Alderman E. Wesley know, the site's actually already been pretty much cleared. I mean, it's pretty much, all the trees have been taken down. I mean, it's all
We
pretty
had
much a clear lot.
Alderman Art Woods.
Yeah, just one quick question. What is the, I know that you and I have talked, but what's the front yard setback on that property?
I believe it's 25 feet.
Okay,
Okay.
that's it.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the UDO text amendment. Ms. Chrissy, you want to do a quick overview on that one? Go ahead.
Sure. Just as a recap, there were a couple issues that were identified as part of the lot coverage discussion. This was sort of the major component of the UDO text amendments. So the issues are that the residential properties are not exactly competitive with the neighboring communities in terms of the regulation for lot coverage. Some of the property owners are unable to make some customary residential improvements. The definition currently does not reflect what is actually to be regulated, which is ultimately impervious surfaces. And then also the other concern or issue is managing stormwater. So some considerations that the council has expressed is wanting some flexibility for residents, wanting to understand the impact on residents in terms of cost and time, and then staff requirements to administer, but then also talking about the increase in runoff, if there is any, whose responsibility really would that be to manage that? The DuPage County has taken the position that ultimately it is more of the homeowners or the property owner's responsibility to manage that, which is why they have some provisions in there to require what's called best management practices. And so that is sort of the trend in terms of trying to manage stormwater. But really, that's just one aspect of considerations with this. The existing lot coverage definition includes all structures and all flat work, which would be sidewalks, driveways, patios, things like that. In terms of the regulation is 35%, which applies to all single-family residential districts. However, the R4 residential district has an additional 10% of lot coverage for accessory structures. That is actually not proposed to change in these text amendments. The proposed definition is just a revision to include only impervious surfaces. This does apply for the calculation for all properties. So if there was an industrial property, for example, that wanted to spend the money to construct a permeable parking lot, then according to this definition, it would not be considered lot coverage. However, it's important to note that they still have setback requirements for parking. They would still have landscape screening requirements, so it's not possible for them to have a surface covering all of the property. And then finally, the residential lots, or the single-family residential lots, the proposal is to count the decks and pools as 60%. And so, based on the discussion at the last meeting, there are three options that are presented here. The first is the option that was recommended for approval by the CDC, where the lot coverage is increased by 10%, but that additional 10%, whatever runoff is generated, would be captured on site, and therefore no additional runoff would be created by this 10%. The second option would be to not count decks or pools as lot coverage. And then the third option is to increase lot coverage by 10% or some other percentage. I don't know if you want me to continue in going into these options, or if you'd like to have some discussion at this point.
I have one question. You mentioned portable bricks, that stores the water. Is that in the proposal too tonight? Because, let me ask you a question. Once they install them, there's a special way that they have to maintain those, because they plug up the hole. So how do we make sure that those are maintained on the property and we allow them?
So this is more of a typical routine type maintenance that is expected of all property owners. The Morton Arboretum has had permeable pavers installed for many years, and They actually have very minimal maintenance. Simple sweeping typically does the trick. But certainly, there are options where you can do some vacuuming of it. And typically, any of the debris that falls in between, in the joints are biodegradable anyhow, and so they end up sort of decomposing as part of the system. And so it doesn't affect the function of the system. But with anything, if there is something that it's clogged and it's causing stormwater runoff issues, then we would proceed with any other enforcement process where we would go through, we would identify what the problem is, and then we would have them fix it.
So, right,
Go ahead.
so more or less, we don't have anything in play saying unless it's plugged in and we just need to run off. So the property owner, whoever comes in, asks to put this in, which we know we already did it in industrial park, and they have to have a special blade to plow the parking lot. So if they are plugged, are we the experts that's going to say, oh, now we got to have this, do we have someone that can say this calls to runoff? Or are we going to have a resident come in and say, no, they didn't call to runoff? And then we'll be in a battle here.
Right.
I mean,
So what we have is we have a stormwater engineer, or the city engineer, which is Baxter and Woodman. And so if we have some stormwater complaints, depending on what the complaint is, we would likely call Baxter and Woodman in to take a look at it, because they're the experts on the stormwater issues.
can't we put in an ordinance after so many years, once a new construction comes in, and they put that in, that they have to prove a document that they were clean? Or could we not put that in the ordinance?
I suppose we could.
I'm just looking at every option, because we have flooding issues now in the areas, and they don't have these bricks down now, but more and more people are going to this brick type driveways and all that, and that's my concern coming up here now. So, I mean, I really would like to look at that if it ain't part of this.
Jeff Murmas?
Yeah, I should note that we had a lot of similar conversation last time this was brought up, hence it being tabled and brought back up with a simpler option, which was that option 3, I believe. There seemed to be a flavor for that last time, so I do remember this one before.
Alderman Jacob?
On option 3, for some clarification, there's none of this calculations for the pools and the decks of that 60%, correct?
Go ahead.
The way that it's presented, option 3 would count decks and pools as impervious surfaces, and then there would be an additional percentage. However, there's many options that the council can consider. These are just the 3 that, some variations of what we discussed.
Go ahead.
Well, I know one of the reasons I've brought this whole thing up before is we have lots of residents that can't even put a shed out there. And, I mean, people just small, trying to just increase their patio a little bit. So I think option 1 and 2 is, there's just way too many complications, and you're just making, it's very confusing to residents, and I think it's more work on the residents, more work on city staff. With that, I would say, I'd make a motion to approve option 3, and instead of 45%, make it 40% and call it a day.
I agree with Mr. Jacob here. Considering our flooding situation in the cities, we got, some parts of the city, we got lousy drainage. So I'm looking at option 3 to modify it at 40% and also put in there that the homeowner should have, you should provide an approved stormwater management. So the extra drainage, it won't go into the city sewers, it will stay on their property. So that is, my option. Go ahead.
My motion would be to not even do stormwater, just 40%, it's 40% said and done. There's no other, I don't want homeowners coming up with plans and underground storage and all this other stuff. I mean, again, it's just adding more to the, complication of things for the residents.
Mayor?
All right, I just heard 2 different things, and one was a motion, there was no second, the other one was a suggestion. want to be clear here, so we're not getting, we had a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
He's the chair. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, now we can have the discussion. Now, if Tony, you, Alderman Catalano, you're talking about best management practices. I mean, these are some of the things we're going to discuss.
Right.
First, we need a motion and a second, because otherwise we're going to go back and forth, back and forth.
Well, I'll make my motion on
Well, there's a motion on the floor.
the, so we have to vote on that first.
No,
No?
no, there's discussion.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, okay.
Alderman Woods.
Yeah, I want to address the permeable pavers. For one, if they're not working, it's pretty easy. Go out there with a bucket of water. If the water runs off, it's not working. If it drains in quickly, they're working. Doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out, convoluted process to figure out if they're working or not. The people that put them in are going to want them to work, because the first place that water's going to go is on their property, you know, and into their storm and into their sump pump. So I just know from working in other communities, and we are not the most restrictive at either. So, but I do agree that there's need for some room for movement without turning everything into a variance. So I don't know whether we, you know, if it's strictly option 3 or a hybrid of that. The problem with changing it to just allowing an extra 10% or a straight 10% is,
Well, we're-
just like
We're
everything
at
else.
5 right now.
5.
5. All
Compromise.
right, so at 5, the people are gonna come in, they want 10 anyway, or they want 12. So there's never really an end to that, because these houses originally had room, then they put a patio and other stuff. So we could argue that, you know, for weeks, but the reality is if we give them just a flat 5 or 10, they're gonna want more. Whereas if they have to compensate for it, and I'm speaking as a guy that would have to pay for it, so I get that, but it's not that overly complicated when you figure the expense of going through variances and all that other stuff. And it's a good thing for the city also. It kind of achieves 2 objectives. You know, that's the way I would lean. I'm really not in favor of a blanket straight percentage. I don't think that's going to achieve either objective that we want to achieve.
Mayor?
So I just want to make sure, so are you okay with the 40% and you're agreeing with Alderman Catalano with the stormwater management plan, or you
No,
got something else?
I would prefer to have the stormwater management plan. I'm okay with the pools. I personally wouldn't count the pools, and I wouldn't count a deck, although I understand they get closed, so the 60% number makes some sense.
Go ahead.
So you're not you're talking stay at 35
Correct.
with,
Alderman Messina?
I had asked a while back, I'd asked Ed to give me the averages of those that came in for a variance, how much they were asking for. I never did get that number, but do we know that average?
7% has
7%.
been,
That's what I thought. That's 42. That's what, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mayor.
7%, and I had a discussion with Ms. Christie before the meeting, and she told me those numbers, and I'm like, okay, so now we're set at, let's say we go to 40. I'm the contractor. You know what, I want another 7%, so I want to go to 47. I'm going to ask for the variance, and my hardship is because I want it, right? That's what they are. And, you know, you can see it already. When the city years ago started putting in more sidewalks, we started having more street flooding in areas that didn't have street flooding. We're about to do a big project in Ward 3 over there and part of Ward 2. And if we're allowed to do it with ComEd using some of their property, we're talking about possibly $1.5 million to $4 million project. Great, we take care of the problem. Hence, we pass this, we give them the 5 or let's say 7%, then we start getting the variances. Now these people are tearing down, instead of going to 35, they're going to 40, asking for variances. maybe we give it to them, maybe not. All of a sudden, all lot coverage over there in that area is at, but even 42%, that's 7% more. We're gonna go right back to the flooding we had, so somewhere, something has to give. I'm a little nervous of, you know, I don't mind, 2 or 3% or something with the decks, some type of, bonus or something, but, let's face it, you got a 10,000 square foot lot, 3,500 square foot home, lot coverage, take that back. Let's say 1,200, 1,400 square feet is driveway, patio, garage. That means they got 2,100 square foot. If they build a 2-story home, they got a 4,000 square foot home. That's a pretty big home. I just want to make sure whatever we're doing, we don't add to the problems. I mean, we're starting to spend money on stormwater, and if we're gonna just start increasing the lot coverages and all the, we're going to have problems.
Alderman Messina.
Thank you. We didn't get many variances last year, other than the one spike we had, right? So
Correct.
the perception I'm starting to see is that this is going to be some massive overhaul, and everybody's gonna start adding additions. I think when we left this last time, it was simply, people are leaving the town. I can't tell you how many people won't buy a house here because they have nowhere to move. They have nowhere to go up. So I thought our end goal was, we don't want people to leave. We want to be flexible, right? And I think 45 is definitely too high. I thought the compromise of 40 was good, but we're talking about like 6 houses. I mean, we're talking about 20 to 30, 50 years from now, maybe, where there's that issue. I mean, I think the biggest problem for me was just like, we just make it so difficult. I can't tell you when people walk in here and they're just like, why do I even bother coming here? Why would I even buy a house? When you go to these other towns, it goes back to being competitive with our neighbors. I mean, you guys pulled the numbers. That's what we asked you to do. We're not competitive. We're not competitive at all. So I think the 40 number is a good magic number. I really highly doubt people are going to come back and keep saying, give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. Because at some point, I would hope that we're going to decline more of those requests that come in. We know the number. We just are trying to alleviate people having to spend the money just to get 5% more. At least that was my objective, and I thought that was what our objective was. So,
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Here's the problem. If you look at the area that this, in Fourth Ward, those lots are shorter. I mean, we have the shortest lots that people can even expand their driveway right now. We have a resident in our ward right now want to expand his driveway, but he can't because the lot coverage. The point is, Ward 4 is the smallest lots in the whole city that I know of. So, I mean, you're penalizing a ward that can't do anything by not changing it. I mean, you think that's fair? So you think that's fair that our people gotta go through and come in and say, oh, now I want ask for it? I mean, it ain't fair. I mean, I don't know yet, but I'm just saying, I hear the negative about expanding it. I hear the positive of expanding it.
oh, positive.
I mean, I just don't know where we're going here.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you look at the wards around, who is the smallest lot coverage right now in our ward? We should know that, right? Which ward is it?
Right, it's where there's a predominance of the R4 zoning district, which, yes.
Is the Fourth Ward. It's up to me, I would expand it more, but obviously this council won't do it.
Alderman Jacob.
Well, first of all, like in Alderman E. Wesley's case, I'm guaranteeing you they're not coming for 10% extra. I mean, I would think the 5% extra would consider this extra driveway, unless I'm mistaken. Second of all, we did have people come here. What's the most somebody asked for? We didn't ask for anybody. We didn't have anybody come here and request a 50% lot coverage. I mean, was anyone even over 40%?
Yeah.
They were all at 42%.
42?
The most recent 3, correct.
Okay. But I mean, we didn't have anybody over 45. I mean,
Mayor.
Question on those, when you're saying the lot coverage is a lot of that stuff was decks and patios and things like that, correct?
That's correct. There were decks, patio, pool.
Right, and part of the problem is we count all this stuff as 100% lot coverage. So if somebody's putting up 20 by 20, 400 square feet, it's counted against them. So you're still not giving people a break on patios, because you'll let them build the bigger house, but you're not gonna let them then put in their patio. I can, look, I can see it, I would have built a bigger house too. But that's what's gonna happen,
Have the contract ready.
Doomsday scenario.
right? No, but I don't have a problem, give a break on the decks and stuff, the pools. Well, if you put the impervious, permeable pavers, I mean, that's something else, but
Alderman Woods.
Yeah, I think my assessment is everybody up here kind of has the same goal, right? To give some flexibility.
Right.
I think we each have a different idea of how that's going to be. I don't think any of us want to make it too complicated. But it can't really be carte blanche, because that's not going to solve it. It's going to create more problems. If we make it a blanket 5, guys will still come for 5 or 10. Talking about the decks, whether we count those at all, or the pools, would have solved most of the people that came. I said that one at the variance hearings, we wouldn't have to have all this conversation. But since we're having the conversation, and to Alderman Eugene Wesley's point, I think having the option with the permeable pavers or other means of offsetting that water runoff, giving people that ability, if they want to take the responsibility to do it, then they're going to be responsible citizens. And for communities that are thriving, if you go to Elmhurst, structure cover is 30% in Elmhurst. Anything after 30%, then I got to compensate. Up to 50%. So I can go up to 50% with other non-structured, non-roof things, patios, gazebos, swimming pools, but I have to compensate. I would say that they're way more restrictive, and I'm not trying to get there, but I think by either reducing the decks to 60%, making pools 0, and then adding the permeable pavers really covers all the things that we're trying to solve.
Sheds also.
Well, and again, depending on how you put those up, those really aren't 100% lot coverage, because most of them are sitting on some wood framing. There's no basement underneath them. I mean, right now, the county and other communities are looking at making us compensate for deeper basements. So you'll get penalized if you go to a 9-foot basement, because they realize that you have to look at the volume of the structure below earth too, to calculate the volumetrics of the hydraulics there. But again, going back to this and keeping it simple, which I think is part of option 3, right? I don't know, because I'm lost at where option 1, option 2, but I think that all of us have kind of a similar idea, and I think that we could come up with something that everybody'd be happy with here this evening without.
Well, right.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Kelly, first of all, next time, I don't know if you put these options in our packet here or not,
Yeah, there.
but I've been trying to find it for the last 10 minutes, like that.
1.4B is the
Dr. Jacobs pointed out.
Okay, besides that, the biggest investment for a person is their house. And, they work hard their whole life for their house. They should be able to enjoy it. I think we need to change it a little, maybe 5%. We have people in Ward 1 that can't even build a deck. They can't do nothing unless they come in for a variance. They're in these, with the decks, if you put a deck on, they could put it all the way around their house then too. In the front, in the back, on the side. So it's the same thing, but we still have to do something for these people. Is their living, is they come to Wooddale to live, and let them enjoy their house. So I think we need to do something, and I'm looking at 5%.
Mayor?
Okay, so you're talking about the decks, so give them the 35% and don't count any decks like wood decks, I mean, not concrete decks. That's one of the things I saw in the thing here. We speak about decks, but concrete decks are different than a wood deck would be. I mean, a wood deck has gravel underneath, the water goes underneath, goes underground. Concrete doesn't go. So, I mean, somebody puts in a 400 square foot deck, you know, it's one thing, you count a deck as, you know, whatever, if it's a wood deck, you give them full break or something, you still get to that same point. Well, we have a motion and a second, so.
One more,
Right, no, I know, I'm
Messina.
trying to keep score here, because I know we're getting all kinds of stuff, I wanna make sure.
Just,
Go ahead.
can you clarify something? So when we say if we exclude wood decks, does that mean they could build as big as they want, as much as they want?
Yes, because currently decks are not regulated as part of building coverage, so they are only regulated in terms of size under lot coverage. If they're excluded completely from that calculation, then they would only be regulated by setbacks.
So that scenario that Alderman R. Wesley said, where somebody could just wrap a deck around their entire house could happen, theoretically. You couldn't say anything about it.
Correct.
With the setbacks.
so so do we need to amend the motion? Would you be willing?
Well, what's the motion?
Go ahead.
The
It's
motion, yeah.
Approve option 3 and make it 40% instead of 35%.
Instead of 45%. What,
So we're going from 35 to 40?
Yeah. 5% was the compromise.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, you wanna? Jeff, we have one house in Wooddale that does the concrete for the driveways. Have we been inspecting that, or have they been given a report since that house been built? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Go ahead.
I remember that being approved like probably 3 years ago, I think, but I haven't seen the inspection record. I'd have to go look, I don't know.
So is there, I take it there's supposed to be inspections, I don't remember.
I don't,
You're younger than me, and your memory's
I remember it
better.
passing, I mean, I don't do the inspections, I mean, I have to go back and look.
And don't tell me you remember, you weren't here.
No, actually, are you referring to like a permeable paver scenario? It's my understanding that there were, I think, 5 projects that were done, and they've all been installed. There's been no reported issues, there's been no complaints of them not functioning properly. But in terms of inspections, really, the most that we do is during construction and then the final inspection. So unless there was some provision that was required as part of the sort of test case, I'm not aware of
I
any
think there
additional.
was some kind of agreement in that for the, what subdivision is that? Ethan Woods.
Janice Court.
Alderman Jacob.
In my motion, I just want to make sure, so I'm at 40%, the decks and pools are not included in that, correct? We're not doing any 60%,
They're fully
they're
counted.
fully, they're counted or they're not counted?
In option 3, they are counted
That's what's
as
so confusing.
impervious.
Okay, I mean, I guess my motion is I don't want them counted. Again, I'm trying to simplify this, so I wanted,
And that's why I was adding into because that's what I thought you wanted, but I wasn't reading that in option 3.
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess if I had to amend my motion, I don't want the pools and decks counted. I don't want people to do 60% calculations and the city to figure all this out, and
Simple.
I want the simple it's 40%, the wood decks and the pools, I mean, like the mayor said, the concrete decks, that's a totally different story. So I want to amend my motion to that,
And no stormwater management?
and no stormwater management was my,
Hold on.
No.
Go ahead.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that? So the definition for lot coverage, do you agree with that in terms of it counting impervious area, excluding wood decks and pools? Is that what you are intending?
Could you clarify that?
So impervious areas where if there was a permeable paver driveway, for example, it would not count towards lot coverage? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the full scope of it, I understood.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I would still like the permeable paver part in there too, for that person that wants to. So we're adding 5, right? And most of these things will be taken care of, but we already know that the other people are gonna come in, whether it's 7% or 10%, whatever the number is. This will give them a vehicle to offset that without going through a variance, and we don't have to go through all these gyrations again. If somebody does want to expand, and if they're willing to invest the time and the money into putting the system in.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Now, since Mr. Jacobs was kind of confused on his motion here, and I'm going to ask for an example on this now. I want to build a pool in backyard. I want to put a deck on, wooden. So that's not counted?
Correct.
That doesn't make sense. The reason is it's because I could take my whole backyard and make it a pool, in-ground pool. It's concrete.
Well, there is
So-
a maximum lot
There is a
coverage, right?
Well,
Well, but if it's not counted
It's
in
not
the
counted.
definition of lot coverage, it's not counted as part of building coverage, and therefore the only regulation that applies to pools and decks would be the setbacks.
so
And they're
you won't have
permitted
a
to
setback in a
encroach.
backyard though.
Well, they're
And-
permitted to encroach in some of the setbacks anyhow, so it's possible that yes, it's possible that they could.
So we
be
could,
very
we could,
large.
we could have a 70% lot coverage with a pool. So, I mean, Alderman Jacobs, I wasn't trying to interfere with your motion here, but I don't want someone to put in a whole pool in their backyard, and then we're gonna have problems on the neighbors. So, I don't know how we want to do this pool situation. I still want to do the 5%, but I don't know how you want to do this pool situation. And the decks I'm fine with. It's a wooden deck, that's fine, but I have a problem with someone building a whole concrete pool.
Mayor?
And Italians do that a lot.
Actually, I'm gonna agree with Alderman Roy Wesley. Do you hear that, Roy? I agreed with you. Really? Yep. Because we didn't put a pool in because, well, you have the patio or you have the pool. So we took the patio and didn't do the pool, but now you're telling me, man, I could put a nice pool in my backyard, I could fill the rest of it with the deck, and I don't have to cut any more grass. That is beautiful. I don't think that's what we want to do, right? There's got to be a median in here. I have a feeling that this one, somebody like me who doesn't like to cut grass, perfect. Wood deck, pool, I'm done. I can even, and of course, in the front yard, I can put another deck too, so less grass over there also, as long as it's a setback. We've got to, there's got to be some type of constraint, something a little bit.
So,
I just want to make sure we don't.
Alderman Woods?
I was just gonna say, this is pretty complex subject, you know, it's discussed in every community. We're not alone. And like I say, I've dealt in most of the surrounding communities, you know, and they all have limitations. I mean, so most of them, I can tell you, are going to where they offload that expense via stormwater management to the resident. Now I get that you want to make it a little easier for the resident, but at some point you want the flexibility to do something without being able to cover the whole lot with swimming pools and decks and patios and sheds. And the way to do that is when it costs people money. It usually limits what they do. You know, so if we wanna make it, that's what I say, you could make the 5. Do we wanna count as the pool's at 60% or at 40% coverage, or maximum square foot of a deck, maximum size of a pool? We could do that. There's other vehicles using the same elements that we're talking about that we could put together to solve this.
Mayor?
Honestly, I was thinking something along the lines of maybe 38%. And then wood decks, not concrete patios like I have, that doesn't count. That would be counted as coverage. But a wood deck where the water flows through, or a pool, I don't know, what's the number you guys want to come up with, 50% or 60%? And maybe total between the pool, the deck, the house, everything, maybe you have a maximum lot coverage, then at 45% or something along those lines. Or 42%, whatever, 40%, maybe 40%, whatever, some type of number, but the water's gonna flow through, I mean,
You got another motion?
no, I,
No, Peter.
Alderman Jacob?
I guess I was gonna ask Alderman Woods, I mean, on a pool, I mean, what's the standard built-in pools? I mean, no one's gonna put I mean, you'd have one heck of a pool if you put a pool in your yard the size of your yard, I mean,
I know people that do.
I mean, the average pool, I mean, what's an average built-in pool? I mean, we're not in South Barrington where we have,
Well,
How-
I mean, most of them around here are gonna be above ground. You'll have some built-ins, which are 24 to 30 foot.
about 600.
I mean, I would maybe agree with Alderman Woods and put a, you know, size limit on the pool or something, and
Complicated.
Alderman Messina?
I agree, it's just mind numbing, because it's just all these variations. I just beg you guys, just keep in mind, we're not Elmhurst. We need a lot of help. We need to ramp up. And this, if we make a change today, just like the people that made this crazy decision with the current lot coverage, who knows how long ago, we change it. I just feel like we need a little flexibility, because I cannot tell you how many realtors I talk to that people are walking away. So I 100% agree with you. I don't think decks, I think we need to put a number on the decks. I just think, and I think Nunzio was kind of getting to that point, just keep it simple. If it's 50%, we count it as 50% lot coverage. To end my
I
comment.
would never go 50% like go.
Oh, no, not 50, no, I mean 50% of the coverage of the
Pool and
of the
deck.
pool and the deck. So I would amend Alderman Jacobs' proposal to go at 40% and count pools and decks at 50% of that coverage.
I would agree to that.
40 plus whatever, 50 pool.
So we have a motion and a second,
So,
and Alderman Woods.
So we're back to the same thing, though. Even if we only count 50% of the deck, you can still put up 2,000 feet of deck and
Yeah.
two 500 square foot pools. Well, that would be the same argument that I would say about all the things, but in an effort that we get along, and I get that I want to make it simple too. The easy thing for me is go, yeah, I'm all in, 50%, that's great, you know, that's what I love, but I can tell you, I'm just sharing what everybody else is doing, and everybody else is going backwards from where we're at, reducing their coverages and increasing the amount that people or property owners have to compensate with storage. I mean, it's gone on for years. It's a constant battle. And that's all I'm saying is whatever we do, you know, if we make it a 5%, which will, I guess if you look at 5%, that wouldn't have solved any of the ones that came here because they'd still be looking for 3%. You know, so that's kind of part of my argument. Whatever we do here should eliminate, you know, 99% of the variances. Right? That's kind of our goal up here, and that's part of why I'm looking at the at least permeable pavers being part of the solution. We can give them the 5%. If they want more than that, then they're going to have to spend a little money. You know, that puts us at 40%, and I can tell you that makes us very competitive with everybody else. If you want to count pools at half, however we do that other thing, but then there's got to be another confining number or a maximum number beyond that. I think that's why Elmhurst, I didn't really delve into how they came to those numbers, but they're 30, 50. So 30 roof structure and 50 maximum. With lots, patios, pools, and all that other stuff. And that 20% difference between roof structure and max, I have to compensate for, or the homeowners do. I don't.
Mayor?
Alderman Woods has mentioned compensate a few times, so you're talking about stormwater best management practices.
Right.
Not a fee in lieu of or something, because fee in lieu of.
Well, I mean, those exist. I mean, in Lombard, I can buy out. You know, it's expensive.
So again,
I'm not advocating that right now.
No,
I'm
no.
advocating that.
best practice.
Go ahead.
So basically, you want a little more of the stormwater management practices, is what you're talking about, correct?
So
You're saying to give them more lot coverage, you have to follow some type of best management practices. They have to do something on their property.
right. I mean, they have to be vested too. So I'm okay with Alderman Jacob and Messina with giving them 5%. But what I say is that whatever 3 or 4 people that came in when we had the rush, those people still would have had to apply. Right? So let's give them an opportunity. If we don't say anything about the decks or the pools and just add permeable pavers as an option, or French wells or drainage and swales, which would cost money, as you've pointed out, but it's an option, you know, without us always going, well, we should make it 45% now or 50% now. I mean, it truly will never end. It will continue to go there. At some point, we have to make a rational decision that it's, you know, enough is enough.
Mayor?
So I just want to make sure, I'm trying to keep score, make sure I hear everybody correct. You're saying you're okay with the 40%, but you want best management practices included, and that would leave the decks and pools as is. They're counted right now. They're counted as they are right now. Am I understanding you correctly? Because I just want to make sure I'm getting all kinds of stuff.
Right, but they would have the ability via French wells, swales, permeable pavers, or whatever to compensate for those if they wanted to do it.
Go ahead.
But that's what I'm saying. So your thing is 40% and the best management, as stated in here, best management practices, and then decks, whether it's wood or concrete or pools, remains as is, and they're counted as the lot coverage, right? That's exactly what.
Correct.
Did I understand you? Okay.
So it's a total of 40%.
It's a total of 40%.
Across the
The
board.
only thing different from the original motion is adding the best management practice and leaving decks and pools alone,
And
if I'm correct.
if I can,
Go ahead.
so that's up to the next 10%. So then they would get
40.
5
they would
extra,
get, yeah,
40,
Right away.
and they can avail themselves to another 10%, making it 50 by using best management
Yeah.
practices. Does
Not
that
up,
make?
not up to 40. Sorry.
Right, not up to 40, from 40 to 50.
That's okay.
Jacob?
And based on what you're saying, Alderman Woods, so we're gonna count the pools and the decks, or we're not gonna count the pools?
We
and the
would be, in that scenario, to eliminate all the issues that we were talking about, we would count the pools and the decks. Although they could be offset into 10% allowance with best management practices.
Okay, so we got 40%, and then we're gonna include the pools and the deck, so it's gonna be a total of 50%. No. Let's get that right. Go ahead, Mayor.
The way I'm understanding, right now we still have a motion, so if the motioner and the seconder would have to agree, number one. So we have 40%, this is a request, okay, 40%, best management practices. The decks and pools are counted as they are right now at 100%. Correct, Ms. Chrissy?
Correct. Currently, they are counted as 100%.
Okay. And And what are we talking about? Because now I'm hearing maximum lot coverage. I don't know where that came in.
That was,
I don't know.
there lo-
You got a call on that.
Go ahead, Art.
So we've already kind of agreed that we're gonna bump it up 5%. That'll eliminate most of the issues, right? So after the 40%, we can add another 10% of coverage. But that 10% that we add, whether that's a deck, a pool, a driveway, whatever it is, has to be compensated for. It has to have negative effect on the stormwater with best management practices. So it would be, essentially, it's zero lot coverage because you're compensating for the water.
Alderman R. Wesley.
Well, Mayor, first I want to know what the score is. Second thing is, Kelly, when we're done with all this, before we take a vote, I would like for you to give an example of a house and the lot coverage, so you understand it and we all understand it. Because right now, I think it's all confused, and we need an example, and we need an example exactly how you understand it of whatever we decide what we're doing here.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mayor.
Oh, okay. So Alderman Woods, you just said 40%, but then if somebody has a wood deck, we're not counting that as lot coverage anymore?
We are counting it as lot coverage.
In the 40%?
In the 40%.
Okay, because I was understanding we're going up to 50%, an extra 10%,
Right.
so you kind of threw me. That's,
Well, now, let's, to
I
make it,
think maybe I misunderstood.
yeah.
Mr. Woods.
So to make it simple, we're going to 40%. Decks are counted 100%. Pools are counted 100%. So the only thing that's in the code that would be changing, we'd go from 35% coverage to 40% coverage.
And adding the best management.
And
Right.
adding
The
this-
next piece of the puzzle that we would add
after.
is you can get a bonus 10% if you
Yes.
compensate for the coverage that you do. So if I want a 500, if I want to put in a swimming pool and I don't have any more room, to give an example, I might have to tear out my driveway, my asphalt or concrete driveway, and put a permeable paver driveway in and a French well or something in the front yard to compensate for the displacement of the water of my 500 square foot swimming pool. So there would be zero or a net zero effect as far as the water is, because I would contain all the water on my lot.
can you amend it?
Go ahead, Mayor.
So then you're giving a maximum lot coverage of 50%.
At 50%.
But that's providing 40% is the max.
Correct.
They don't need best management practices for 40%.
They don't need best management practices for
But-
40%.
But if we go over the 40% with decks and pools, let's say a pool is, said about 600 square feet, so 600, that's where then they have to come in with the best management practices.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Does the motioner
Well-
agree?
Does everybody understand that? Okay.
No, who's going to explain it?
Well,
I would amend my motion to Alderman Woods,
A second.
the scenario he just put out.
This-
If you could maybe,
Bush,
Miss Missy,
Alderman
No,
Messina
no.
seems to know the whole motion, so.
go ahead.
Can I amend Alderman Jacobs' motion as a second?
you would have to agree to the amendment.
And if I understand it correctly, we're moving it up from 35 to 40%, beyond 40, up to 50. That's where they would have to institute some type of best water management practice. There would be no water management needed from 35 to 40. That is my motion.
Wait, you agreed to the second.
That's what I agreed to, Brett.
Correct.
Okay, so everybody understand that?
Oh, you got a question?
Go ahead.
I want her to, so she understands it too. I mean, there's a
Ms.
lot
Christie,
going
go
on
ahead.
here.
I'm pretty sure she understands.
I just want to make sure,
Let her explain it.
yes,
Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
go ahead, here's our picture.
Okay, so unfortunately, I did not foresee the percentages that we were talking about in terms of increasing at 5%. But essentially, this is an example where we would have so here is an average residential lot. Their improvements are such that they have a driveway, walkways, a house, patio, and a shed. With the 35%, they would have no additional improvements allowed under our current regulations. Under the option that we're talking about with some minor modifications, the driveway would not count because it is permeable paver, so it doesn't count towards lot coverage. They would have in this scenario, we would have the pool and the deck both counting, but up to 40%, they would not have to implement best management practices. If they go beyond 40%, between 40 and 50%, then they have to install best management practices and would not need any sort of variation.
Correct.
Go ahead.
All right, so if we have 10,000 square foot lot, we can build a 4,000, well, we can have 4,000 square foot lot coverage. But now, you just said, I thought the permeable pavers were added as part of the best management practices over the 40%, but now here, you've taken it out. So, I just want to make sure, so if my driveway is 500 feet, so I've got permeable paver, and then I build a house, or I cover everything else 4,000 square feet, but then I would need the best management practices if I take the whole 4,000. If my house, I only do 3,500 square feet and 500 driveway, then I'm good. If I go over the 40%, then we need best management practice.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, right, that's, and I was just trying to use the numbers for it, okay.
Okay, we're going to take that as a,
You got everybody clear?
yeah. So we're going to have a roll call on that? If you want to,
Wait,
No, there's,
Eugene needs.
go ahead, Eugene? Alderman?
Not mine, forget it.
Okay.
I'm so confused. Go ahead. These poor people want to build a house and
Actually, we made it better for them.
I understand that, but, yeah. Go. We should start on the motion.
What is one motion?
Alderman Woods,
yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley,
Yes,
Alderman Eugene Wesley,
I'll abstain.
Alderman Sorrentino,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
No.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Passes. Okay. So next is the report recommendation, I'm sorry.
We do have the other series of text amendments as part of the UDO text amendments.
Okay.
Many of those text amendments, as we discussed at the previous meeting, were trying to coordinate and reconcile some of the differences that were, or the discrepancies that were found. So sometimes there was text that had, was reflected differently in an image, and so we were trying to coordinate those so that there was better consistency. We also recommended a change to allow parking as a variation, which the CDC did not recommend approval of. There was also a couple others, but did you want me to try and go through those and summarize those? I can pull up my other
Yeah, go
presentation
ahead.
if we.
Alderman,
Yeah, before we get going, because there's a lot of pages and a lot of words. As I went through it, I mean, a lot of them are just cleaning up, matching up stuff in one section to the other section, some of the verbiages, some of the words that they used. I think the biggest ones, or at least for me, the concerns were the parking. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is let's just do what we want, you guys will figure out what best practice is, and you'll come back to us later and we'll change it, that's not acceptable to me. So if I'm reading through being able to vary parking spaces, right? Right now, you don't have a recommendation for what that is? Is that correct?
Which section
Go
are
ahead.
you on? Or-
I'm not sure I understand. The recommendation from the CDC, they did not recommend approval, but staff was proposing the ability to allow the required number of parking spaces to be varied.
Mayor?
Actually, I had this question earlier. I think you're talking about, right now, if somebody, let's say, okay, we don't have, I'll pick Portillo's, for instance. They buy a piece of property. They need 50 spots. They can only do 48 on their parking lot. Well, they don't even have the option to ask us for a variance right now. Is that what you're talking about? I think-
Well, in general, I'll read.
Go ahead.
From their report, as staff has been reviewing the parking ratios, it appears that it requires some additional research to determine the suitability of those ratios. You know, so they're asking for flexibility in this, and in the meantime, they're gonna study it. I'm not so sure that's the way to approach it. You know, if they did the study and they came back and said, this is what we found, just as we talked about lot coverage, what the industry is looking for, you know, what other communities are doing, all those things, then I'd be a little more open to approving it. But I just don't want it to go back to the old variance process, and whoever comes in here may or may not get the variance. I mean, if the number one thing that we argue about, especially in the commercial sector, is parking spaces. Everybody comes in, they want more parking spaces, more parking spaces, more parking spaces. So we're gonna open the floodgate that everybody can come in with a variance to get more parking spaces. So as a community, I mean, we should look at that, and either the numbers that we have are so unrealistic that we should change them, or guess what, they are realistic. But if we're gonna start reducing parking spaces, because companies can come in and create a nice narrative that says we don't need that many. 5 years later, they leave the building and the next people, nobody else can use it. HSBC, right? That's the biggest complaint, not enough parking. You got how many acres of building and how many thousands of square feet. So I personally look at it and go, I don't know why I want to create that scenario. I'd rather look at the issue and develop what's the right strategy for that.
Go ahead.
And we did identify that we do need to look at the parking ratios. I think that when looking at this particular provision or regulation, we were looking at from a downtown perspective. If you have buildings where you want to have your building all the way up to the property line and there may not be sufficient parking, then there's really no option for varying parking regulations. And in a downtown environment specifically, that can be very problematic. So then that can actually halt development in the downtown. But as you mentioned, we do want to take a look at the parking ratios. We did not have an opportunity to do it as part of this package that was brought forward. But yes, we realize that we do need to look at that.
Mayor?
Talking about the downtown area, for instance. I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to step up and put up some type of parking garage somewhere, just like basically Elmhurst has parking garages behind those buildings. I mean, half those places don't even have a parking lot. You have to park in the garage and walk the half a block or a block, whatever it is, to get to the spot. So, that's a discussion for the future. I mean, we have to come up with something. I know we've talked about it at the train station and making some kind of walkway, maybe up and over Irving Park, or, I don't know, something. Or parking garage on each side, so. At some point, we're gonna have to come up with something.
Alderman
Because there's not gonna be enough parking.
Wesley?
All right, so what I'm hearing is parking spots. So, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. So, according to the conversation I'm hearing today, is that we're gonna let staff decide to reduce the parking spots or add parking spots?
Go on, Ms. Chrissy.
No, staff is not deciding whether or not to increase or decrease. We would be looking at the parking ratios and coming back to council with a recommendation on how to modify the required number of parking stalls based on industry standards. However, the ability to vary the required number of parking spaces, if this is approved, then council would have the ability to approve or deny any requests for parking variations if somebody came in and wanted to have 5 fewer than what was required.
Well,
Go ahead.
we could do it now as a council level. If some developer comes in and say, hey, I ain't gonna meet my requirement, council, we have done that in the past.
Go ahead.
The code specifically states that we are not able to vary the required number of parking stalls. What may happen is you may have business owners come in and reduce the width or the length of the parking stalls. They may ask for variations for the drive aisle width. They may ask for, setback variations to be able to try and manipulate the parking lot to fit in the required number that they need. But the code specifically states that we do not have the ability to vary the required number.
Okay, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go back to a building that came in town here. We vacate the street and made parking spots for them. You weren't around at the time. Mayor, I believe you know which street that was, over by, off of Thorndale. We vacated street because they said that there was a company coming in that needed parking. And we let them stripe it and put parking spots in. So that came to the council for approval because we vacated the spot, adding more parking.
Ms. Chrissy, go ahead.
So how is that different from what you just said that,
Sure. On-street parking is able to be counted towards their required number of parking stalls if it's within close proximity and it's 500 feet or something like that. There's a certain distance that it has to be from the property in order for that to count. I don't know the specifics of that, but I'm guessing that if it was this, that may have played into it.
Mayor?
The one the Alderman's referring to, there was no variance for parking where we gave them less, parking space. They needed more parking spaces. There was a street that it's attached to the bike path and whatnot. It was a dead-end street, so they asked for those, if they could use spots there, and we granted that. So then there was no variance given on parking. We gave them, they actually had more than they needed then. So there wasn't we did not give a variance where they needed 100, they only had, 89, and we said, okay. They needed 100, the street was there, so I'm just saying 100, I don't remember what the numbers were. They ended up with 110, so actually they ended up with extra. But that's because the street was there and it was not a through street and it was just sitting in front of their property.
Go ahead, Mr. Merman.
Yeah, I think we understand Alderman Wood's perspective with the council probably feel more comfortable with a plan similar to the lot coverage plan with some parking examples before we say, yeah, we can vary, although we're not going to vary, obviously, but we should have some concrete examples on that. While we know we probably have to do it, let's get some examples so we can come back with that. But the other Scribners or Scribners or however you want to term it, maybe we can just wrap that up and bring the parking situation back.
That's what I was.
Okay.
And the street in question was Bauman Court.
Right.
so are we
Go ahead.
not talking about parking now? Because my suggestion, if they build a building, a requirement requires so many parking spots. There's been buildings built in this town that require so many handicap and so many regular parking lots. Okay? I could go to 2 businesses right now that we approved in here, and they don't have 1 handicap parking spot in it. Okay? Because we look the other way. So far I'm concerned, if we go ahead and do that, they have to have handicap parking, and they need to do it.
So we're gonna,
Okay?
bring this back.
We're going to bring back the parking issue to another committee, and
Okay.
then we'll handle the housekeeping items tonight.
Okay. Mr. Roy Wesley?
Isn't every business required to have at least one handicap?
I don't think we should be talking about this in open
Okay,
session like
fine.
this.
Okay, so next, we're going to go to the business license renewal process. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion to approve the remaining text amendments?
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the remaining text amendments, eliminating the one about parking and parking variances.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so next is the business license renewal process. We have an overview. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I don't know if we have to spend a lot of time on it, depends how much the council wants to discuss, but I had mentioned a potential issue last week that has arisen where the city's been very progressive of late with the fire district to really get into all the businesses, inspect them, really improve the business license renewal and inspection process. You've been reading about that in your reports. We had a situation where we had about 50 of the roughly 650 renewals that were not completed. These businesses did submit their fee for renewal, but they did not submit the required paperwork, which we are requiring now for key holder information and other life safety type issues as part of the inspection process. So they did pay the fee, but the 50 did not complete their application. They've been late a couple months now. It's been dragging on. We sent out some late fee notices. Once we sent out the late fee notices, we did start receiving all the paperwork that was needed, coincidentally, I guess. So that 50 number then went right away down to about 20 or so that hadn't submitted all their information. But per the code, even though those 30 that submitted the information, they're still technically late, and the late fees for those businesses were in excess of $700. And that's why I brought this up to see if the council wanted to do something with that this year, since we're just really being more progressive now. We're fully staffed, we're working with the fire district. Just what options, if the council wanted to talk about this at all. But right now, we have about 20 outstanding businesses that still haven't submitted paperwork.
Okay. Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we've put a lot of pressure on staff. We got new staff. We're out there, proactively going through the businesses, which is a good thing. And I think that a lot of the businesses some of the people that have called me, that the confusion was with, they sent in the 3 names. They didn't send in the application. Some people sent in checks. Some people sent in paperwork and no checks. I've gotten all different kinds of calls. That's why I made a phone call. So with that much confusion, I would imagine whatever it was we did wasn't maybe as clear as it could be, or certainly the local businesses were so used to the lax practices of the past, they didn't know what was going on. So in this particular case, most of those people did step forward and pay their stuff. I don't really want to ding them $700. I mean, that's a little, I don't mind. And I've talked to a few. I says, we're going to discuss this and maybe reduce the fine, but there's probably going to be something. I go, you guys are 3 months late. I mean, as a business owner, you have to understand that's something that you check on every year. It's like your insurance. So I'm in favor of drastically reducing that and putting a time frame to, if you said there's 20 more people, obviously they know, maybe we give them another 2 weeks or 3 weeks. If they don't pay, then they have to pay the fine. I don't know how much more you can do.
So you want to reduce the fine to how much?
I would say $50.
Want to make that in the form of a motion?
I'll make a motion to reduce the fine to
Second.
$50.
Mr. Murmas?
The one thing that may make it easier to get the attention of the businesses, they were written a $100 code fine, a $100 ticket. And we have had businesses that are paying that component of it, not the $700 late fee. So it may be easier logistically if we just
Okay,
made it
yeah,
$100,
I
because
wasn't
they already
aware of
have
that
that
part.
ticket paperwork.
Okay.
I'll amend the motion to the $100 to pay
$100.
the code enforcement ticket.
Does the secretary agree?
I agree to amend that.
Okay. Alderman R. Wesley?
I think we still have to go back and visit this, maybe not today, but we have to look at these fines, because if you look at the mom and pop store here, you know, some businesses are run with 2 people. If a person gets sick, they're not going to see that form. And I think we should give some discretion to the city manager or someone else that they be able to work with these fees. Because if someone does get, that's not, why should you penalize a person if they end up in the hospital? If you're in the hospital for 2-3 months, they're trying to still run their business, then they're going to get a fine for $700. I think we should give some leeway to the city manager or someone to be able to work on those fees.
Mayor?
Okay, the $100 is just for this year, correct, if I'm understanding?
Correct.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, and I was actually going to follow up with another question and touch on Alderman Wesley's question too. I'll start with Alderman Wesley's question. I did speak with him about that, and there are some scenarios where it could be unfair, so maybe could be a good summer topic. We have a lot of time before the new business license renewal process starts, so we can maybe talk about the fee structure for next year and some things you're talking about, because we really don't have a lot of those facts. The purpose of this meeting was I wanted to inform you that there was a little bit of an issue, see what corrective action we could take. So in addition to that $100 this year, I still need some direction on the exact amount of time I'm going to let those other 20 outstanding businesses continue not to submit their application, because the code does state too, after they have the $700 fee, not only that, I mean, we eventually have to shut them down because they're not providing us with their paperwork. So I need, what is the time on these 20 that are still outstanding?
Go ahead. Mr. E. Wesley?
I would give them 2 weeks. They got more than enough time. They don't apply in 2 weeks, I'm sorry, shut the business down.
Does the motioner agree, 2 weeks?
I agree 2 weeks is a good time frame.
Go ahead.
We're not shutting them down, though. Definitely not.
Well, that's
There's sales tax. You don't want to do that.
Mayor?
That could be a gas station that's,
I think this problem's gonna disappear after this year. I don't think we're gonna have this problem ever again, not at staff and the fire department, but Alderman Wesley brought up something. So when businesses are restriping their businesses, hopefully part of the checks is that those handicap spots are in place. I don't even, after this year, you won't even see this again. Everybody will have their business licenses in right away.
Correct. My recommendation, with all the construction going on in the city, I'll give them 30 days instead of 2 weeks. Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, I should clarify, I might have misspoke a little bit. It says we have the ability to shut them down. It's not like we're gonna go shut them down. Our main goal is to get the information, and if they don't submit it within the 30 days, obviously, they're gonna be subject to that full $700 fee.
Right.
And we'll continue to work with them. We're not gonna go over the top.
Alderman Jacob?
I would agree to amend my motion to the 2 weeks. However, since there are only 20 businesses and there may be some mom and pop businesses there, could we not send city staff to 20 businesses and let them know, hey, we sent this in the mail, we need to get this going here?
Mr. Murmas?
As I stated, our goal is to get compliance. We don't want to find people. We want to get the information we need. We've sent many letters. We've done phone calls, many phone calls. If there's 20 outstanding, I'm sure we can work with code enforcement. Again, our goal is not to shut people down and get fines and fees. We want the information.
Messina? Alderman Messina?
I think he answered it.
Okay. Mr. E. Wesley? Nope. Okay, so we have a motion
Wait.
and a second.
Sorry, let me ask quick.
Go ahead.
When would those efforts start with those 20 businesses, being with the holiday coming up?
Go ahead.
I think we would get a game plan, a really good game plan going Monday morning. So sometime next week, we'd start a game plan, go from there. So just to clarify, it was the $100 ticket.
Okay.
And then for the remaining, the $100 ticket for everybody, the 50 that didn't.
Correct.
The remaining 20 they would have 30 days or they'd be subject to the $700.
Okay.
I thought,
The
that was the
motion
motion.
was 2
2
weeks.
weeks.
I wasn't
but
changed to 30 days.
In an effort to get everybody aboard, how about in the holiday, as Randy brought up, it's true. We'll make it 21 days,
Okay.
if the motion or the seconder agrees.
I would agree.
Okay, so let's have a roll call on that.
We're doing $100, right?
Right.
Correct.
Alderman Woods,
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley, Alderman Sorrentino,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Okay, items to consider for future meetings. Sign code amendments, that's April 28th. TIF Engineering, RFP, that's May 12th. And additional wayfinding signs, that's either May or June. Any other items? Alderman Jacob?
What, just when we're talking about the additional wayfinding signs, if we could maybe discuss a couple regular major signs, like I know we have a small sign up on Irving Park Road. I think it would be nice to have a full-size sign there versus the little sign, so if we could maybe add that to that discussion.
Okay. Alderman E. Wesley?
I just have one question. On the sign by the Dunkin' Donuts, is there something going underneath that?
Yes,
ahead.
we will have landscaping at the base of that sign.
I mean, because the base of that sign's all black, so is there going to be some decal on there, or are we putting bushes around that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had this question from a couple other aldermen as well. Still technically spring now, but we've snowed today, so the plan is to get out there early in the spring season, spruce up the bottom, nice new mulch, some nice appropriate plantings, things like that. It's not gonna stay like it is now.
Okay,
Is there,
okay. Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.
you should probably redo that again.
Public health and safety? Oh, you did yours already? Okay. I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order. Let the minute taker show that the same members are here. Next, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 11, 2016. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Next, report and recommendation, a purchase of replacement brush chipper from the Vermeer Corporation in an amount not to exceed $79,555. That is my motion.
Second?
Questions? Alderman Jacob.
On the machine that we currently have, I mean, the machine's 6 years old and we've spent that much money on fixing it. I mean, did we buy too small of a machine? Is the new machine gonna be, I mean, to spend that kind of money for a 6-year-old machine seems like a lot of money. I mean, I just wanna make sure we're buying the right size machine and we're not gonna have to spend that. I'd rather spend it up front than buy the right machine going forward.
Mr. York.
Yes, the machine that's going to be purchased is the right size machine. The machine that is, that we currently have, I'm gonna say that it was probably a lemon from the beginning. There's really no reason why a machine of this caliber should have, this should be their third engine that we would have been putting into it. And that is why that we have asked to, kind of accelerate the purchase of the, equipment, so we didn't have to spend the extra $10,000 on a new motor. So, I've had a lot better luck with Vermeers in the past. Mr. Rubach's had a lot better luck with Vermeers in the past than we have with Morbarks. It's a little bit different type of machine. It'll do the same thing, but it's set up a little bit different, which will be better for our employees, I believe.
Alderman Jake.
And then what kind of warranty, I mean, does it have some kind of warranty so we wouldn't have to replace the motor? God forbid if something breaks on this one?
Mr. York.
Yeah, there's a 2-year, 2,000-hour limited engine warranty on it. We have also proposed to purchase a 5-year, 3,000-hour warranty, that if we do blow an engine within the first 5 years, then we would just have to pay the $250 deductible. So we felt that that was a pretty good insurance. For $1,200, what costs them a new motor is, $10,000 to $15,000.
Alderman Messina. Mr. York.
Yes, it is. It's in the 79,000. That cost is already included.
Mr. Roy Wesley.
How many hours do you use this machine since we done the, starting to, using the service for chipping? Meaning MDL?
Mr. York.
The current machine has 1,400 hours on it in 6 years.
1,400, could I continue on this?
Mr. Roy Wesley, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so 1,400 hours. That 6-year machine comes up $13,259. I guess you divide that by 1,400 hours. What I'm saying is, the cost for buying a new machine at $80,000. I mean, we're spending $13,000 a year for this one.
2
So
He's taking the 80,000, dividing it by the 1,400
Okay.
hours.
it
that
comes
you
out to
used get it.
$13,000.
$13,000 a
Do
year.
we need this big of a machine?
Yeah,
I mean, how many, I'd like to know, since we went with MDL, I'd like to know the hours that you're putting on these machines.
Mr. York.
okay. So this machine is 6 years old. We have 1,400 hours on it. Total, 1,400 hours per year. Whether or not we use MDL or not, we're still gonna need a chipper, because I'm not going to call MDL out or Chiosic or whoever to cut down a 10-inch tree or to pick up branches that Tony calls in over in Ward 3 and says, I need you to come over and pick up 3 branches. We're gonna need to have a chipper to do that. Yes, an $80,000 piece of equipment is expensive. I understand that. But it's also peace of mind so that when we do have the windstorm like we had 3 weeks ago, and our guys left the shop at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, went around town, picked up brush, and then went out on Monday the next week and picked up the brush. So it didn't have to wait until our first brush collection of April, on April 11th, to pick up all that debris. So, I mean, yeah, we could, if we're not gonna do that, if we're not gonna purchase this piece of equipment, then what we would probably do as a staff is come back to council and ask for a $150,000 clam bucket machine so we can go by and pick up the wood, put it in the back of a truck, take it, and then have somebody else process it for us. So I do think that whereas it is an expensive piece of equipment, it is something that the city needs to have in our back pocket, part of our toolbox.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
In return of that, you said you replaced 3 engines on this thing, correct?
Mr. York.
Okay.
Alderman Wesley.
So what is going on with these engines? I mean, 3 engines in 6 years? That's quite a bit. Are the mechanics not familiar with the machine? Are we not doing proper maintenance on these engines? Are we, What kind of engines are these? Kubotas?
These are,
I mean,
Mr. York,
these are John Deere engines. I believe that our mechanics are doing proper maintenance on them. I believe that this piece of equipment is a bad piece of equipment. It's not a piece of equipment that I would have ever purchased. I just believe that the setup of the equipment is not, does not work properly. I don't believe that there's there's no malice on the part of the Public Works Department. There's no neglect from the part of the Public Works Department. If an engine blows out, an engine blows out. This happens.
Alderman Eugene Wessel.
okay.
I have a couple questions. The company that we're going with, what's the name of our one that we have now?
The current machine is a Morbark.
Okay, my question is, do you have, since we bought the equipment, when was the first engine blown on it? That would be the one question, okay?
There was 2 engines that were blown on it before I started here in November of 2013.
Okay, how old was the equipment when we blew the motor?
Mr. York.
I do not have the exact dates of when those
Well,
motors were blown.
here's where I'm coming from. So if we blew 2 motors in a short period of time, all right, 3 years, and we bought the equipment, did we even, you weren't here, and I'll ask my city manager, did we go after the manufacturer for default on those motors? Or did we just say, we'll just put a new motor in, forget it?
Mr. York.
The first 2 motors were covered under warranty.
Okay, so we didn't pay for it.
We did not pay for those 2 motors.
Okay, so that
So
answers.
this third motor,
Okay, we'll
the,
get a few more.
the warranty period has expired. So that's why we would have to pay for this last motor.
Alderman Peter Jacob.
I would say that with the amount of storms and, like you said, I mean, I don't want to have to wait when we have a storm for an MDL or some company to have to, go and pick these up and, I mean, I think the size of it, I mean, if you guys think it's good, that's what we should go with and just be done with it.
Alderman Messina.
I won't yell at you, you said you weren't here for the first 2 times, right? No, I see where you're coming from. I just wanted to correct or confirm something. This is a different company or a different brand than the one we have now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Eugene Wessel.
One other question. It is our policy that anything over so much dollar has to have 3 bids, three quotes for, are you telling me this is the only company out there?
Mr. York.
There are other companies out there, yes.
Okay.
This was priced through a national joint power, the Joint Purchasing Agreement, Joint Powers Agreement Alliance, excuse me, the National Joint Powers Alliance. They do go out and bid out the size of equipment, so it'd be the 19-inch capacity drum chipper. They bid that out between Vermeer, Morbark, Beaver, whatever the other companies are out there. And this is the bid that they received, the lowest bid for this type of equipment. It's the same thing that we did last year when we bought the Kubota mowers through the NJPA. They went out and they put a bid out for certain type of mower, and that came in at the lowest pricing. So whereas we didn't put this out to bid, it was already bidded by another governmental, quasi-governmental organization that we're allowed to piggyback on their bid process.
So my question is, so is that what we do now? I mean, state purchase for squad cars, I understand that, but is that what we do now for equipment? We're going to piggyback it with that company? I just want to verify that we're going to do that. I mean,
Mr. Murmas.
Yeah, we do that when we can, when we think it's in the best interest of the city. That's been a municipal initiative for the past decade at least. Engineers and managers to join these joint purchasing cooperatives. It actually saves the city money in staff time by not having to go out for bid. These big conglomerates do it for us, and they get the lowest price. and then we actually, it's great for us.
Alderman Catalano.
If you want, I can pick up those branches and bring them to Public Works. Okay.
Alderman Messina.
Question and comments. One, is it salvageable? You only have it, you can sell it for anything? You can scrap it?
Mr. York.
Yeah, we're gonna sell it. We're gonna put it out for surplus and put it on public surplus like we would anything else, noting the fact that the engine does not work. So hopefully we'll get something out of it, where someone may want to pick it up for $3,000 or $4,000 and put another $15,000 in it and have a $20,000 chipper. But we felt that that wouldn't be a good money spent for the city to pump more money into a piece of equipment that we've had such problems with in the past.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Couple more things. So, just 'cause I wanna try to wrap this up. You're the professional, he can size it up, I think, I trust your judgment, that you're not gonna overdo it. If he does overdo it, it's probably just gonna make us more efficient to open us up to do other things. That's my assumption. And then the other part on this is about that purchasing agreement, Alderman Eugene Wesley's point. It's a positive thing. Mr. Wesley, it's a positive thing in that that bidding agreement will override. So the infamous Granger consolidation, they're also part of that alliance, and if that price is cheaper, which sometimes it is, they are entitled to that low price. So it's simply leveraging the power, the buying power that these guys got. But I understand your concern to conserve the checks and balances, which is why we have Jeff on board to do. But I'm for it. Hopefully we can vote for it, or vote on something.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
I have a follow-up. So if that outfit that we've been blowing motors in came in the lowest bid, okay, came in the lowest bid, and that company outsourced it and say, this is the best price, you think my staff should be here telling me that that's the lowest bid, that we've been having motors blown on a piece of equipment? I would think my staff would have brought back a better proposal. So if you do this consolidation like we talk, and I agree with that 100%, but if they came in with the lowest bid and they gave our recommendation to the staff saying, that's the company we recommend, is staff going to bring that to me? That's the question I have with that.
Alderman Messina.
One quick comment, goes back to comment number one. He's the professional, that's why we hired him, that's why he's the director. He's not gonna bring you crap, that's why he's bringing us this. He could go back and bring us crap and probably get us something for 40 grand, or maybe go on eBay, but he's not. So, just saying, he's the professional, we gotta
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Matt, you said that you had the problems with the John Deere engine. There's a John Deere engine on this.
Understand that.
So why are we going to John Deere if we're having problems with their engines?
Mr. York.
Because they're under the specs?
I believe that the Vermeer machine, even though it's a different John Deere engine, and we know from past purchasing that different models and different horsepower types of engines have different levels of success. There was about 5 years ago, there was a set of Ford engines that basically were the worst thing that Ford has ever developed. And we know now that we do not buy the 6.0 liter Ford engine, diesel engine, because it doesn't work very good. And they've made modifications to it, they've changed the engine types. So we understand that it's John Deere. I've had luck with John Deere tractors, I've had luck with John Deere mowers, I've had luck with other John Deere things in the past. I believe that the setup of the Morbark machine along with having the John Deere engine that was failing in the Morbark machine, I think the combination of those two is why we want to move away from that, why we want to go to Vermeer. We're also now going to, we're hedging our bet a little bit by purchasing the new equipment, which is going to have the extended warranty on it. so that if we do run into a situation where we're replacing 3 engines in 5 years with the Vermeer, it's not going to cost us more than, $250 to do it as well. So we understand that there is some issue involved, and that's why we've also gone with the extended warranty.
So, the extended warranty is 3,000 hours for 5 years.
The extended
So-
warranty is $1,200,
No, 3,000 hours.
3,000 hours.
So the difference between just doing the 2,000 hours and the 2 years is 1,000 hours only.
Well, but if you realize the fact that we've only spent 1,400 hours in 6 years, then you get basically an extra free 3 years by getting or you get 3 extra years by buying the extended warranty. Because it's first 2, either 5,000 or 3,000 hours or 5 years.
Okay, and the payments down here?
That's an option. That's not something that we're going to do.
What do you mean we're not going to do it? It's 60 months for 0, right?
I can.
I mean, am I understanding this option right? Does it 60 months and you pay a payment of $1,547? Is there interest on this?
I would have to do the calculation to see if there's interest on there.
Because if there is no interest, use their money.
We can talk to Mr. Wilson, and if it's free money, then we can look into it.
Because it says 60 months based on 0%, 0 down. I understand that. But I don't know what it is. It says 60 months.
Alderman Peter Jacob.
I would just like to say that I think our Public Works Director did a great job by, doing this warranty, and I think we're going to be well covered here, and I think we should just go with this thing.
Be careful.
Mayor, please.
We can get the information by next week's meeting what the percentage is, but I don't think we had a motion yet. Do we have a motion yet?
We do not.
Okay.
So,
I'll make the motion approved for a shipper for not to exceed $79,555. That's my motion.
do you have a second?
I don't know.
No.
Alderman Catalano? Second.
Yeah, I believe you made the motion and Mr. Catalano made the second originally.
Oh, there was.
You already did.
And just for point,
It was, yes.
For-
It's been so
for-
long and I listened to so many.
point of clarification.
That's why I asked. I wasn't sure.
Point of clarification, if we would go with the monthly installments, we'd be paying over $92,000 for the same piece of equipment. So we're not going to do that.
No, we're not.
There is, yeah.
So, yeah, we have the motion, we have a second. Just before we take the vote, though, I just wanted to I did a little bit of math with the 1,400 hours to 6 years. That's 39 days a year that it's used, or 7.8 weeks, which comes down to 339 days, or $339 per day that it's used. And if you look at that piece of equipment, the cost to lease that or rent it would probably far exceed that. So I get that was a bad piece of equipment, but when you look at it and dice the numbers, it was still pretty decent setup for us. So, roll call?
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Alderman Sorrentino.
Yes.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next items to be considered at future meetings. Streetlight policy, April 14th. Lincoln Court streetlights, April 14th. Tree planting contract, spring. Construction contract, Forest View, spring. South treatment plant feasibility study to be determined. Alderman Roy Wesley.
I'm not sure if this is your committee or if it goes under,
I think it goes under my committee.
everything goes under yours.
That's why I think that way.
Potter Street.
Yes.
I got you, Peter, don't worry. What's going on with that? Are we sending out for bid for landscaping? Are we starting the project, or spring is 2 days old?
Mr. Murmas.
Yeah, I had this conversation with a couple of you. We're working as quick as we can. You should be seeing some information on this, I think actually on the 14th, coincidentally. So,
Mayor, please.
I just want to read a quick thing here for the Stormwater Commission. City Stormwater Commission, if you invites everybody to join them on Earth Day 2016 for the Salt Creek cleanup. It's Saturday, April 23rd from 9 a.m. to noon, and they're meeting at Lionwood Park over at Edgebrook and Irving Park Road.
And Mr. Murmas, maybe you want to give a brief sentence on the opening of the Bussywood Dam and the lowering of the flood elevation at Wooddale Itasca
you want
Reservoir.
me to do it?
No, go ahead. I was going to read it next week, but it's okay. We can-
Yeah,
can't
we received an email from DuPage County Stormwater. Good news for all Wooddale residents and Itasca residents, and residents of DuPage County for that matter. The Bussy Woods Dam project that a lot of the communities were working on looks to be complete now, and that actually has a big impact downstream for specifically Wooddale and the Wooddale Itasca Reservoir, because county controls that facility, and they used to only open the gates at an elevation of 676. And Wooddale have been pushing for a long time, along with Itasca, to get them to open those gates earlier to alleviate some of the concerns that the residents have in Wooddale. It causes them a lot of heartache, damages to their property, damages to city infrastructure, specifically in Ward 2. So with this Bussy Woods completion and the lobbying by the city, over the years, they've finally agreed, and they are now going to open the reservoir at 675.5, which is quite a bit of a difference for us with our flood operations, and it keeps water off the streets a lot sooner. So this is great news for the city of Wooddale, and we've been working on this for a long time.
Is there a camera on the measurement on that dam?
Yeah, you can actually, residents can go online. DuPage County Stormwater has a couple different cameras in Wooddale and at all their facilities. So you can go on their stormwater site and you can click on the camera and see it in live time.
I think he's talking about Bussy Woods.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
What's the latest on Edgewood sidewalk construction? And did we send letters out to all those people saying we're starting, not starting?
Mr. York.
Yeah, on Tuesday, we had pre-con meeting with Copenhagen Construction, who's going to be doing that project. Their letters went out on Wednesday. They went door to door. Robinson Engineering went door to door and dropped off letters to all members, residents up and down Edgewood. Construction will begin, hopefully, we'll be out there starting the 4th of April, and that's when we'll start staking and weather dependent, obviously. That project will begin the 1st of April and with a completion date of June 30th.
Excellent, thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.